Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I said I was gonna buy it, and I did. And I've played it for a few hours, and I gotta tell you, I think I've wasted my money. This is Marvel's Avengers. I won't put story spoilers in this footage, although I will have to cut it up a bit in order to compensate for that, because it's an hour and a half of footage and there's a lot to see. And again, I'm just really disappointed with this one because of how much potential there was, because there's one game that I'm going to keep coming back to, and I don't even have to go outside of the Marvel franchise to do it, and that's Marvel's Spider-Man, because you would think if the Spider-Man game had any sort of influence on the Avengers game, it would be so much better than it is right now, but that's just not the case for many different reasons that we'll get into. But with that said, the one thing that I do like about this game that has carried over from the beta is the combat. I still like the combat. Most of the characters are the same. You got to play around with like 2/3 of the roster that you get at the launch of the game anyway, so I just went for it. I played with Iron Man as soon as I could get him, and I stuck with him, and I really enjoyed my time with him. The combat is still a lot of fun when you get it right. Plenty of fancy split-second dodging, plenty of different moves to use, depending on the character you've got, of course, although they are all generally similarly the same, because here's the thing about the way this game's character roster is designed. Despite the fact that you would think the Hulk and the Black Widow couldn't play any differently, they've both got the same set of combos on the square and triangle buttons, and it all comes down to all the abilities on the outside and what you do with them. And it kind of comes down to, does this person have a ranged attack that's a big rock or a series of guns? Can this person fly? Can this person use X ability to defend themselves or attack with? It's just a couple of like on-off switches for each character that they flip differently for everyone. But at the same time, they all still play to a particular set of strengths. Like, Miss Marvel is pretty good at keeping everyone healed up. The Hulk can absolutely tank damage. Iron Man is great for flying around and doing distractions. So if you've got a full party of people that you can fly around with and basically just play through the entire game with, you can do that, and you can probably all assign yourself to a specific role, which is great. And there's a fair amount of different kinds of enemies, all with their own different ways of combating them, but there are a couple of things that get in the way of it, and we'll get on to that. But the first thing I want to talk about is the overall universe, because unless you've been living under a rock this whole time, and me, I've been living under a pebble, I suppose, you'll have noticed at some point that the Avengers, who are the basic superhero group of, well, there's a bunch of them at this point, but the main ones are like Captain America, Iron Man, the Hulk, Black Widow, Spider-Man's in there at one point. They have taken over the world with their cinematic universe, which has just kind of wrapped up with both the actors for Tony Stark and Captain America leaving the entire project, which is certainly something that we'll see how that turns out. But basically, this new game takes place in an entirely separate universe. And this whole universe seems to start directly at the point where the Avengers form up. It's kind of bizarre. They're just unveiling a new headquarters at the beginning of the game, and that's where the attack happens that basically turns them into wanted criminals, right? And for whatever reason, no matter how hard I look through this game, and Spider-Man was fantastic with this, right? Where you'd find these collectibles in the world, and these collectibles in the world would have these audio narrations from Peter Parker telling you about how the universe had progressed in the time before, in the times between he became Spider-Man and the game started, because there was like a good 8 years between both of those points. So you would get a lot of information about how the universe had progressed without you actually seeing it. Fantastic idea, and I absolutely loved it. Avengers doesn't do that. It doesn't even come close. It's like the universe doesn't even exist before the game starts. You'll be dropped in saying that the Avengers are unveiling their new thing to thunderous applause. There's comics of them, which continues to make me scratch my head. And there's a huge crowd gathering around to see their new headquarters open up in San Francisco. And I just can't help but wonder what is going on before this point. It's implied that all of the comics, and I'm not even going to claim to know which ones, because if you have been paying attention to that scene at all, you'll know there's multiple comic continuities, so we have no idea which one we're in, if we're not just in an entirely different one in general. but you just don't get any idea of what the Avengers did to become famous outside of everything you've seen previously. Mainly the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I've heard a joke on the internet that calls the cast of this Avengers game the stunt doubles of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I don't think it's that bad, but it is very obvious that they're going after the movie personas without having license to the movies. So, it makes it kind of strange when you're trying to play through this and you're seeing characters that act very much, but not completely, like their movie personas in an entirely different timeline. And then you get this one scene in the very beginning, which is objectionable for a number of reasons, where Kamala Khan cites off a quote from Captain America that was in a comic, but I'm not entirely sure if it's in the same universe or not, and it just becomes incredibly confusing if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. So, is it meant to be like just all the comics smushed together into one? Because again, the smart thing that Marvel Spider-Man did, and the smart thing that Insomniac did by extension, was they picked and chose what they wanted from the comic universes, put them all together, and even went to the trouble of making it so that when you collect a comic in the game, it tells you about that comic and what relevance it has to the universe in general in a way that actively breaks the fourth wall to give you more information. You can argue there's a better way to do it, but at the same time, I never felt like I was being left in the dark. In Avengers, it's just this gigantic question mark space of timeline before they make their San Francisco headquarters. As a result, I feel like I have to draw from everything I know about these characters outside of this game in particular, and it's just unpleasant. It's honestly just a bit of a pain to think about, because I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the drill is with all the heroes. I don't know if they're meant to be any different or if they're meant to be just an amalgamation of literally everything they've ever done, including Captain America becoming a Hydra agent at one point in the comic books, because why? Even I know that's kind of fucking stupid, but they went and did that anyway, so I don't know. So basically, I don't know where I'm coming from with the story when it starts. I also want to just pop in again after I did this initial record and tell you about something else that happened in the game. So, at one point in the game, you capture a scientist named Monica, who's important for running a lot of the operations of the bad guys over the course of the game. And then, just out of pure curiosity, I decided to do a specific mission as the Hulkmeister in order to go through his, unique story chain, only for Monica to have magically disappeared from the cell we were holding her in to lead this operation again, for some reason, because the game just doesn't seem to have any care whatsoever about maintaining any sort of continuity in the middle of its mission chains. Just thought I'd point that out as another reason why I'm really fucking confused about this game's story. And the campaign itself is just a series of linear missions, and you start off with none of the Avengers. So if you don't like Bruce Banner or Kamala Khan's movesets, you're shit out of luck. You are completely shit out of luck, because you're going to have to grind for a few hours in order to get the people you might like. And even then, if you're just playing the campaign missions, it's just going to endlessly swap between all the characters you've got unlocked at that point. And it kind of has a problem, where when you are introduced to a character, you don't get all of their moves right away. Now, every character has 3 moves. They've got a move on L1, a move on R1, and a move with both L1 and R1 at the same time that charge up over time. And they've also got plenty of other moves available to them, like, say, extra little hits you can do, things you can do like dashing and then pressing the light attack button, jumping and pressing the light attack button, things like that you unlock by leveling up. However, if you play on the harder difficulties of the campaign, the enemies will assume that you've got access to those moves, because I have no idea how the fuck you're supposed to beat this campaign otherwise on any difficulty higher than normal, because they will floor you every single fucking time. They will just come in and swipe your ass before you even have a chance to think about it. And that gets really annoying after a while, because every single time I ran into a new Avenger and had to take control of them for a section, they had no moves, and they were putting me up against an enemy that assumed I had all the moves. That makes things really, really painful to deal with. And as a result, I just ended up sticking the difficulty down to easy and just blasting through as much as I could, right? before I got to like the 6-hour mark, realized I was getting really close to the end, and I was just like, fuck it. I don't want to play this anymore. This isn't entertaining. I want to try the side mission stuff. And as a result, you can't play the game on a difficulty that's interesting, because I was playing on normal, and that was too easy. So I bumped it up to hard. And hard just doesn't make the enemies tougher. It doesn't make them take more hits and deal out more damage. It also makes it so that a bunch of their moves are a lot harder to dodge and counter, to the point where it's honestly ridiculous waiting for them to have an opportunity to do an attack that you can reasonably exploit. Especially in certain situations in the story where you're constantly like being swarmed by these self-destructing bastards, and you've got this gigantic bot in front of you that's gonna take like 100-something hits to destroy, and you need to get around the back of it in order to do damage with it without taking damage yourself. It gets really frustrating to deal with, to the point where there are actual bosses in this game that have easier combat encounters than the new Avenger introductions, because they're just so limited on their moveset. It's dumb. And even then, it's only that dumb in the campaign. When you get to the other missions, just like the war zones and the I don't even remember what they're called. I don't want to call them flashpoints, because they're that's what they call that Flash TV show, which is a DC thing. So that would be funny. Totally not referencing myself there. So yeah, there are these really short missions that have really good little combat encounters that you can just drop in for 5 minutes, beat a bunch of people up, and then jump out with some new loot. These campaign missions often tend to go on for a lot longer than that, mainly because you have to work your way around the stupid difficulty when they're introducing heroes with no moveset. So yeah, that's great. At least when you're doing the really short missions, you can bump the difficulty up and all it does is up their power level, but you still have all the moves you need access to. Hell, most of them, like, the game will actively try to prompt you to, like, hold the analog stick in a direction and hold the circle button in order to jump over the top of an enemy. Never works. Never fucking works. I've never been able to get this shit to work outside of the tutorials. It's fucking dumb, dude. It is legitimately the stupidest fucking thing. You want to know what else is stupid? Virtue signaling, because there's a lot of that. And you want to know why I brought up that Kamala Khan quoting Captain America from a comic thing earlier? Because that's what she does in one of the most woke scenes I've seen in a video game in a while, where it's this pasty white kid, because of course it's a white kid, right? A white dude kid, I should say, a white boy, who comes in as like, and the weird thing is, he's even got a black girlfriend standing next to him who doesn't even react to him getting dunked on by Kamala Khan citing a quote from a comic book from Captain America. And again, that's why I'm confused about whether or not this takes place in like a timeline where the comics happened or the comics exist, because it's a quote in the comics, but apparently the actual quote in the comic was a private quote to Spider-Man. I wouldn't know. It's just, again, it's just crazy, because it doesn't make any sense in context, and when you just heap a gigantic load of woke onto it, it just becomes immensely unpleasant to sit through. Because it's obvious they're putting that in just for woke points. It doesn't make any sense in context. It doesn't make any sense that there'd be this kind of bully there. And of course, immediately, like, in the most, what's the word I'm looking for? The most coincidental thing ever, but in a negative way, bloody both Thor and Captain America just end up landing on the helicarrier and saying hello. And admittedly, the campaign itself is just weird, because there's two things. The absolute majority of the plot is getting the Avengers back together. The absolute majority. You don't get Captain America back until like the second last mission or something like that. It's excuse me. It's really close to the end. So the absolute majority is just getting the band back together for the most part and dealing with AIM trying to attack you for the most part. And there is some character development for Kamala Khan, but she often ends up being the most uninteresting person in the room, because you actually have like Tony and Bruce getting into a fight every now and again. You actually have Thor just picking up his bloody hammer and turning into God again. And then you've just got this girl who has really stretchy hands, who starts out being really uninteresting, but somehow magically makes everyone like her anyway, to not being annoying, but still having everyone magically like her anyway. I don't see that much likable about her. That's pretty much it. She's just constantly popping off modern-day cultural references as if those are character traits. And she is fangirling. Doesn't take her long to stop, but again, it's really annoying in the beginning. And when that's all done with, she's just there. And everybody else is just that much more interesting. But again, it's probably because I'm just pulling in from everything else around these around the game and not the game itself. I don't know how these characters are going to react in this situation, which is infinitely more interesting than Kamala Khan, who I've honestly never heard of before this point. If that isn't a bad sign, I don't know what is. And the campaign is just a series of linear missions. You get, by the very end of it, you have most of the Avengers, you take out the bad guy, and that's it. It feels like, you know what I said earlier about there basically being no context in the beginning? Well, towards the end, it's about the same, because you finish the plot, and then it's just nothing. It's like the first 3 seasons, it's like the first 3 episodes of a TV show that's supposed to go for 26 episodes. You feel like you're missing a lot of story. You get to the end of it and you think to yourself, well, I didn't get to the end of it, but considering that I only had a couple of missions left to go, I would have been thinking to myself, wait, that's it? And then again, look at what the Marvel movies have been doing. They're making an entire universe that was built over the course of years and having slowly accelerating threats. And it's like, it doesn't really work for a game that you pay $60 for. At least that $60, when you're talking about like the Marvel movies, for example, would have gotten you like 5 movies over 2 years, which is about as much time as the campaign takes in this game. Oh man, okay. Ooh. Now, they have promised that they're going to be updating the game over the next few months to add new Avengers, new story plots, and new just campaign missions, content, locations, and what have you. But, and here's the but that is making me worried. They're going to be adding in new Avengers along the way. And I don't know how they're going to deal with having all of these Avengers all just going along in the main story at the same time. I feel like it's just going to become an absolute cluster. I can't explain to you exactly why, but I'm just thinking about how you've got Black Widow, you've got Thor, you've got the Hulk, you've got Captain America, you've got Iron Man, all in this one game that already feels a bit too short and doesn't actually expand on the characters, their personalities, or their motives. And then you're going to try and be dropping more in along with new story stuff, and I can't help but think that this is going to turn into an absolute slaughter, especially with how they've done the campaign. And then we get to the user interface. This is a Destiny clone. That's pretty much all there is to say about it. It's even got the same fucking interface cursor thingy that you have to drag around, and not like a purposefully designed, goes exactly where you think it's going to go menu cursor that makes everything that much faster to operate. But they haven't learned the lesson from Destiny's bullshit either, where you have to be waiting between loads in order to actually get into a mission, where you've only got 9 slots for individual armor pieces, and it doesn't even like send them to storage or anything once you're full up. You just can't pick up any anymore, so you have to go into the menu and slowly get rid of all of them. Well, you can't even like select multiple at a time in the options menu and delete them all at once. You have to sit there and delete them all one at a time in order to get rid of all of them. While in the storage, where you can put multiple pieces of armor at once, you can. It doesn't make any sense. Again, this also happens in the story as well. You've got 2 different factions, right, that you can do daily missions for that ups the influence between for them individually, which means you can buy like pretty high tier gear from their individual shops. With that said, one of them is on the helicarrier and one of them is in the anthill, which is a place like in the middle of Utah. So it basically means that if you want to travel them back and forth between these 2 areas, you have to sit through like 3 loading screens, right? The thing is though, at one point in the story, everyone that's important in the anthill moves onto the helicarrier, except for the bitch you have to go to get your fucking daily missions. There's no reason for her to still be there. Everybody else has moved. But it doesn't make any sense. Why do you have to leave the one person that you need to talk to every single day in the one place where you need to sit through 3 loading screens in order to talk to her and then go on a fucking mission to actually do those missions? It's retarded. It's making the same mistake that games like Destiny and every MMO ever have made. And they're just constantly like throwing endless mounds of bullshit in your way to make you take tons of time to get all of it done. So, yes, what else is there? There's the battle passes. Now, I'm not actually that huge of a decrier of the battle passes the way it works this time, because you start with all the battle passes, one for every individual character for free, and then you can progress on them with 2 daily and 2 weekly missions, right? However, again, 2 dailies and 2 weeklies, those are only enough to get you about maybe 30 out of 200 points you need to fill the entire bar. So it's still going to take you like several weeks in order to effectively fill that bar. At the same time, you'll be able to, as long as you save the credits for them, move on straight to another pass, assumedly. But man, it's not great. It's not great. It's just too slow. It's really slow for no discernible reason. I guess they just really want to keep people on that cosmetic grind, because that's what you do with these games. Instead of putting them behind like really difficult to achieve things or something along those lines, you just end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater and making it yet another meter to fill up. I was about to say that I really like the mission structure of it as well, but we'll get to that. So here's another problem with it. The technical performance alongside all the RPG bullshit is absolutely ghastly. So you have tons of menus that you need to go through all the time, and they're always lagging. They are never up to speed. You will be waiting for multiple seconds for individual menus to load in. And if you go one menu too far, it'll lock on that screen while it loads. So you need to wait until you can go back to the menu you actually want to go to. And it's infuriating. I got this on PS4 because, God forbid, I'm a Spider-Man fan. I like my Spider-Man, and I'm probably the sort of person they were aiming at with this bullshit. I feel ashamed, but holy crap. And I want a PS4 Pro, just to point that out. Now, the game does have an option in the options menu that lets you go from 4K graphics to best performance graphics, quote unquote. The best performance is, however, so fucking terrible that you can start seeing the individual frames when it gets really busy. Holy crap, it's bad. It's really bad. It should not have released like this. It absolutely should not have released like this. This multi-year project that took probably hundreds of millions of dollars to make is running worse than a copy of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 that probably cost nothing in comparison to develop and is infinitely more satisfying in its progression. And I at least wanted to try the Avengers Initiative. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, the game's split into 2 modes. You've got your campaign, which you can play by yourself, or you can matchmake with a friend, or you can go into the Avengers Initiative, which is basically their option of saying, hey, you can just ignore the story completely and start grinding out missions for loot, experience, and general cosmetics. And I thought, you know what? A looting game that skips all the story bullshit actually sounds like a really cool idea. And I wanted to try it. So I did. I went to the main menu and I pressed X on the Avengers Initiative. You have successfully linked your Square Enix members account. Okay, that's great. Hit the button to close that prompt and I'm plopped back in the main menu. Hit the button again. You have successfully linked your Square Enix members account. Hit the circle button again, hit the X button again. You have successfully linked your Square Enix members account. Do you get the idea yet? Because I tried this like 10 times and it did not work. And I'm pretty sure I know why. Because I played the beta on the PC. And then I linked the same Square Enix members account to my PlayStation 4. And then it just stopped working entirely. So, yeah. I got locked out of half the game because I can't actually play with the online matchmaking on because my Square Enix stuff just refuses to work, proving that Square Enix is absolutely terrible at everything ever. And that's pretty much all I've got to say about it. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. I don't know. Is this an example of developed by committee? Because that's what it feels like. It feels so generalized that it appeals to almost no one. I liked the combat, especially when you get like your 3 AI dudes in and you're all able to just run around and be beating the crap out of people and helping each other out when you need to, because the AI is actually pretty good at being a partner. It'll drop everything and come and get you back up once you fall down. Otherwise, it'll just hold its own, although it has this tendency to not perform takedowns half the time, or like take important objectives. You kind of have to stay there yourself. But at the same time, it's still pretty enjoyable to run around, beat the crap out of things, earn a little bit of loot, although again, the whole RPG Destiny style nonsense that makes it really annoying to fucking manage for no discernible reason, when you could easily handle all this shit in one fucking menu because we figured out RPG design 20 fucking years ago. How do they not know this shit already? But it's also got a hell of a lot of problems. The story is piss weak, you don't know what's going on, you don't like half the people there, and the other half of the people have to rely on information from outside of its general area because it's very hard to tell who these people are without the context that this game does not give you. The difficulty can be all over the place. It's woke in really annoying places. The user interface and the RPG stuff is all programmed in that really annoying way that makes everything take as long as humanly possible. It runs like shit on consoles because if it's running this bad on the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One and the original model PlayStation 4 must run even worse, and I can't even imagine how bad it is on those consoles. And even worse, for me personally, the one thing I wanted to do, just ignore the story, beat the crap out of a bunch of goons and maybe like get some loot and try and have a little bit of casual fun that way, just didn't fucking work for me. I want my money back. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. I want my money back for this shit.
Wait another 30 seconds before you take off.
There you go. Maybe I'll listen to the hive mind next time and I'll actually not buy something that's destined to be terrible. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all at next time.
Units are converging on the projected crash site.
There is a special enemy unit close to your location. They may drop something useful if defeated. We made it! We're alive!
Keep your heads down. I'm on my way. Understood.
Aim forces are here!
Nearly there. The dropship should have a weapons locker. Use it.
Good call. We still have guns.
Aim's all over them. Not for long.
Save us, please! quite go as we planned.
It never does. Now, Jarvis, did my payment come in?
Sizable transfer has just arrived.